friends, it's Laura here from The Change, and I just want to welcome you to our mini-series of minisodes. We're bringing you a selection of our interviews from across seasons 1 to 3. We've spoken to some amazing women, and we thought, well, why not take some of the bestest of the best bits and bring them to you in little sneaky snippets while we get busy preparing season 4 with a whole bunch of new interviews. So have a cup of tea, sit back and have a little listen to some of our highlights with some great banter and chats with some brilliant women. We'll catch you soon. Bye.
This week we hear from author Kerryn Mayne. We interviewed Kerryn in season 3, episode 9, and she's quoted as saying, "Writing a book with twin toddlers was a dumpster fire." Listen in to hear the best from that episode.
Just while we're talking about, the twins and busy life, I'm so fascinated by your incredibly busy schedule, and I'm wondering if you could just talk us through quickly, like a kind of not a day in the life, but like how. And I was listening to you on another podcast talking about how you write in like 15-minute snatches here or half an hour there, and I think that's really interesting that you for other women, especially with kids, to think it's possible to fit these things in.
Yeah. I think so. That was really born out of necessity. I had some good chunks of time writing before I had the twins. So that first book I wrote, I only had 2 kids. I had all this time on my hands. But I absolutely do not think that for people with 2 kids.
I'm such a loser.
So, but I had a really good sleeper because we had a COVID baby. So he was born at the start of COVID. And so we were in a really good routine. So he'd nap, I'd put the TV on, I'd type. And because I figure the house always wins. And so there'll always be laundry, there'll always be dishes. And I felt like I'd achieved something if I'd written something. So all I thought to do was if I can get something on a page every day. So if it was 15, 20 minutes, like ideally, obviously more. But if I would usually set the timer on my phone, and I still do that now because otherwise I'll stuff around on it. Like I'll be, I'll quickly pay that bill, and then I'll just quickly scroll through other people's lives that, I have no interest really in. But, then you go down the rabbit warren of, what was it I was thinking of last night? There was somebody in a movie and I went, I wonder what he does now. Oh, it was Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I'm like, I wonder what he ever did. And that's the rabbit hole I went down. And I thought, why? Why do I need to do that? He hosts Dancing with the Stars in America, in case you're wondering.
Okay,
good. But so if I set that timer on my phone, not a do not disturb or anything, and then I just do it, and I just say I'm just doing a writing sprint to everyone, and I'll sit there and I'll try and ignore everybody. But I'm also really mindful that it means to my kids I probably look like I've got my head in a screen a lot of the time. So the older 2 do know I write books, but whether or not that sort of translates to the fact that, I'm saying to them, nah, TV off now, but now leave me alone while I sit here and type. But if I had to wait for the perfect set of circumstances to write, I wouldn't. So it's really just, and I've been lucky because for the first half of this year, my husband and I have both worked our day jobs part-time. So the other 2 days of that, so I do 3 days a week in policing, and then I do 2 days of writing.
Wow.
It just doesn't always pan out that way though, because there's appointments and there's sick kids and all that sort of stuff. So it is not a set schedule. It's really it's dynamic and it's evolving. Dynamic makes it actually sound a lot better than it is. It's a bit of a dumpster fire. But I've got deadlines, and deadlines are really good for me. And I think one of the best things I did before I had my contract was I set out a time of when I wanted to do things by, and that made me achieve it in my own time, but gave myself that
goals.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like saying raise your children. Like this is just an ever evolving goal, like you need those little if we can get to lunchtime, let's all have a chocolate or something. I don't know. So I just gave myself little goals and little, set them along the way, and then magically got published, and now somebody else gives me deadlines. I always loved English and writing in high school, and then never thought of it as a job, so I stepped away from it. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left high school, so I did uni for 3 days, and then I fell asleep in a lecture. Got up.
Relatable.
Yeah, and I left, and I didn't go back. And I went and travelled overseas and did stuff, and then I joined the police force at 25, and just then was just busy, busy with life,
Yeah.
busy doing
Yeah.
things. And then I'm actually glad it's sort of the way it came about probably 10 years later, and got my book club and was inspired by Sally Hepworth, who's like, well, if you want to write a book, write a book. And I'm like, oh, okay then. And I'm kind of glad I did it sort of like that much time later, because I felt like I had sort of some experience under my belt, because I had a nice, my parents were married. I lived in the same house my whole childhood. I didn't see any drugs until I was in the police force. Like it was, there's not a lot of good fiction in that. Yeah, it wasn't exactly a tale of adversity, my upbringing. I mean, I wasn't allowed to go to parties when, go to the pub, sneak into the pub when I was 16. That was about as harsh as it got. But I did sometimes anyway.
There's not
Good
really
stuff.
a book in that, right? Like,
not a book in that.
Short article.
Not unless, it ended really badly. So, picked it back up and got into it. But I can't say – so there's no stories in my books that are directly drawn from police, but it's like the two are kind of like my life and like those things going into my brain are just kind of inextricably linked. So I can't say there's nothing in there. Like if I wasn't a police officer, I would have written the same book, because that's not true. Like there's stuff in there that just has flowed because of that. But it was a bit lazy of me to pick crime as a genre, because it meant I didn't have to do as much research.
It's good. Write what you know, isn't that the thing?
I know.
Yeah.
But and then, for a long time I was like, well, write what you know, but what do I know? And then when I was speaking to the author Sally Hepworth and then Lisa Ireland, another Australian author, and they were asking me police questions for their books to make it, I'm like, oh, I actually have this whole skill set that I didn't realise people just didn't know. Because you just think, well, I do it every day. That's not exciting. That's not special. But apparently there's something in it. So did that, but I didn't want to be writing a police procedural, because that was too much like work. And it would be, because I'm a rule follower, I would have, I would have had to make it too much based in reality. So, and that was going to be boring. Like, if you're speaking too much paperwork and procedure and sticking to the truth, although true crime, people love it. So, I mean, there's still fun in it. But of course, when you're writing fiction and you can go off on whatever tangents you want, which I'm really good at doing, as you can see from this conversation.
Love it.
But I loved it because it was
diagnosed ADHD. Just saying, no, only kidding.
So it was a good escape from work as well. So as much as work influenced it, it was also my way to disconnect and do something for myself, because I wasn't otherwise doing anything solely for me. It was work and then home and then back again.
Yeah. And did you start by writing the full book or doing a chapter or coming up with the idea? What was the process just in sort of getting that over the line?
So right at the start, I just workshopped a whole heap of ideas. So I just kept writing down, I think I said, write down 20 ideas and then see which one you like the idea of. And then I started probably 3 or 4 books and were like, oh, no, nothing really in that. And then I wrote a whole book, which has never been published. So that one was like my apprenticeship, I like to think of as, which was a police procedural. So it was a detective working in the Melbourne suburbs, and it was very much based in, how things would be done and very run of the mill. But that one I learnt a lot, and I learnt that I could do it, and then benched that, and I started trying to map out what it is. Because I read a lot. I love reading. I've always loved reading. And I think to be a writer, you absolutely have to. I went, what is it that I like about books? Like, what are the ones that stick with me? And it was characters. I wanted to walk away with a character still with me and not just finish it and go, oh, good twist. Like to come back to a character to reread a book. So I went and kind of delved into what characters I liked and who I could create that people might want to imagine being part of their lives. And I'm really proud of the character in the first book, because the feedback I've got about Lenny Marks has been, just people that say, I don't think they realize how big a deal it is to me, you know, oh, Lenny will live rent free in my head for, you know, the foreseeable future. And I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted. And one of the librarians here in Melbourne, who's just amazing and very supportive, and she said, I saw a Friends mug, like Friends the TV show, because it's quite a big theme in the first book, because Lenny Marks is a bit obsessed with Friends the show. She said, I saw a Friends mug and I wanted to buy it for Lenny, and then I realised she's not a real person. Wow. Because I just wanted something that sunk in your head and stuck with people. So it came down to, there's a character and that's who I want to write about. Now, what has happened to her? And then unfortunately, because it's fiction and you need a character arc and you need a plot, you need to just throw some really terrible things at your characters. But then ultimately I wanted it to be hopeful or uplifting without being corny. I didn't want you to walk away from my books, and this might change as my writing evolves and my plots evolve, but I didn't want you to walk away feeling worse about the world than you got into it. And I'll give you an example, because if Stephen King hears this and listens to your podcast, I'm happy to feel
Let's hope so.
Yeah, I'm happy to feel these emails or calls if he's upset. But then he writes horror, so like that's meant to be. But I read his book Holly, and it's a detective book, but then it's got this cannibal theme and stuff in it. And I'm already a vegetarian, or I would have been after that book. And I walked away just kind of like, kind of good read, but you know, and that's amazing, because a book that makes you feel anything is, you know, doing its job. But I wanted somebody to walk away and be just kind of like, shut the book and be like, nice, I liked that. I'm going to, that's a book I can give to, you know, my mum, my dad, my friends. So that's, that's kind of how it all came together. And then I'm not good at planning my writing. So that is not an efficient process for me. I have to write and then write the book again and then write the book again. Like over the top of it. Like, so I'm not starting a blank document to get to know my characters and then also really knuckle down what I want the plot to be. And I presume this will be an evolving thing as well. Hopefully I'll get to keep writing books, and I'm writing the third at the moment. And I'll think about, you know, I'll be like 50% through and I'll go, you know what, it'd be really good if I had have woven in at the start that this character does this, and then that, you know, whatever happens. And sometimes I'll go through to the end and then go back to the start. But I know that means, you're not done yet. Like, there's a whole other draft of this to do. So it's a time-consuming process, and at the moment the time is really hard to come by. So it has been it's been more difficult, this book, to write, because I'm writing it with 2-year-old twins. Newborn twins was easier.
Give me newborn toddlers. Twins any day over toddlers.
Yeah. Although don't give me back newborns, because I don't love a lot of things to do with newborns. But the time you've got on your hands is better. And you can also watch whatever TV show you want while they sleep on you or while they feed.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you bottle feed one and...
Yeah, when I'm breastfeeding one and bottle feeding the other.
But that's a social experiment. Yeah.
I'll let you know how that goes.
Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.